Hey, how you doing? Time for a video, you know? Forget about it. Today, let's get into the conversation we were having about sales. Only today, we want to delve more into the sales process itself, the various phases, steps, stages in the journey to a sale. And of course, depending on the type of business you run, this can vary widely from one business to another. And, as an example, if you run an e-commerce business, that's going to be, most of these phases will take place in a virtual mode. And maybe we can reference that as we go through, or do another entirely different video where we focus on more on how this is relevant in the context of e-commerce. Today, we'll probably focus more on a physical sale with a person involved in the phases of the sales process. So I've heard it referred to as the road to a sale, trail to a sale, the journey to a sale. These are essentially the steps that, regardless of what you're selling, in one way or another, you're going through in order to influence somebody to part with their money and partake in your product or service. So the first phase is generally thought of as a welcome or a greeting, and that would be when you first communicate with the customer. Maybe a customer expresses an interest, or you've reached out to a customer, a prospective lead yourself, and in that, naturally, some of the things that occur are an introduction, where you perhaps introduce yourself, and ideally you might find out the name of the other person, and you can spend some time building rapport. This is where the relationship starts, in the welcome, in the greeting. And it's time to break the ice. Regardless of the type of sales you're in, people are a little on guard. They don't want to be, quote unquote, sold something. They want to make a logical decision, or at least they think they want to make a logical decision. Many of these decisions are in fact emotional. But people want to make a wise decision. They don't want to end up making a mistake. In fact, if you don't recall from the last video, we said that the number one thing that prevents people from buying is fear of making a mistake. And I always forget to say this until somewhere mid-video, but pause the video now if you don't have a notepad in front of you and a pen. I want you to take notes. It'll just help you to remember this, and I want you to take something away, an actionable point away today that you can apply to your business immediately. Later you can come back, review your notes, you can watch the video as often as you want, and you can apply different things, but the goal I want you to have is to apply something today. All right, so back to it. The very first step is a greeting or a welcome. So we say we want to build rapport. We want to build a relationship. We want to establish common ground. There's a reason that the customer is exploring your product. Assuming it's not a cold call, you may have reached out, but let's, for the sake of argument, say that in some way they've expressed interest. Either they've shown up in your brick and mortar store, or they've made an inquiry via the internet or telephone. In some way, you received that lead, and there's reason behind that. There was something that piqued their interest in your product or service. So you want to just spend a little bit of time letting the person know a little bit about your personality. When I used to sell cars on a retail basis, I always strive to continue the greeting process, continue the welcome, and building the relationship, building the rapport as long as possible. Now, sometimes the customer was, in a hurry, ready to get to it. They knew exactly what they wanted, and we had to move on. Other times they were more standoffish, and it was necessary to spend more time, as I say, breaking the ice, as it were. So I always liked it when, after speaking with the customer for about 10 minutes or so, they'd ask me, "Do you work here?" And I knew I'd accomplished my goal, because my goal in the greeting was to never come across as a salesman, or the stereotypical car salesman, at least. I wanted them to engage in a conversation with me naturally, the way you would with anyone. And sales should be something that's very enjoyable. If you're doing it right, it is enjoyable. Your job is not to trick somebody into purchasing something that they can't afford or that they don't want or that won't be good for them. You're trying to solve a need that somebody has. And I would advise you that if in the sales process you discover that the timing's not right or the product's not right for the person, I wouldn't persist and try to close the deal. Instead, maybe you want to point that out and say, well, maybe we should revisit this when the timing is right or whatever. So this is kind of an important concept, even though we're only talking about the welcome right now, is to embrace the concept that you're not trying to sell something at all costs. You're trying to create a perfect match between what somebody needs or wants and what you have to offer. And that won't happen every time. It happens frequently enough and at a high enough percentage that you can do very well in sales. So I think that's one thing you got to focus on from the beginning of a sales career, from the beginning of a sales process, is that you relax. If you're relaxed, you can help your customer relax, and together you can explore. Often you'll hear in a retail sales environment, people walk up and say, "Hi, can I help you?" And that's the kiss of death. You never want that. That's typical of what any salesperson might say. And therefore, you're going to elicit a response that's typical of what any customer might say, which is, "No thanks, I'm just looking." And instead, try something very non-threatening. Keep your distance, physically keep your distance. Don't walk right up into the person's face and thrust your hand in front of them and try to shake their hand and introduce yourself. That is not what I'd recommend at all. Instead, maybe go within talking range of them, and of course not shouting range. You don't want to be shouting stuff across the room, but approach them cautiously and give them their space, and then open with a line about maybe the weather, maybe a local sporting event that occurred. Did you see the UFC last night? Or something even more general like, do you have the day off today? Nice day to be shopping, something like that. If there's more than one person in the store, in the process, when you're greeting, be sure to acknowledge everyone. And I would always recommend, when there's children involved, have some fun with the kids. It can be a little bit stressful for parents to focus on, especially if it's a big ticket item. But make it fun for the family. If they decided to go shopping for something as a family, then I would try to engage everyone and keep everybody interested. Sometimes people come with a friend, sometimes they come with an advisor, somebody who's more knowledgeable that can give them advice later on about what they thought. And try to acknowledge everyone, show everyone respect as part of the greeting process. But maybe we'll end there for now on the greeting and move on. There are lots of little tips, and I want you in the comments to ask me questions or present to me objections or things that you found, and ask me how I would deal with that, and I can address that in other videos. But the next step after you've welcomed somebody is you want to transition into the discovery phase, or the needs discovery it's called. And that's where you're going to use some of that rapport you had to naturally discuss with people what it is that brought them into the store, or what it is that engaged them in, made them engage in the sales process with you. Why do they have interest? What do they need? And I would advise you to spend some time sorting through what key pieces of information, what critical components about the sales process do you need to know for this person. Like, you may need to know who the decision maker is. You may need to know the timing. If you're selling a particular product that is on back order, or that takes 2 months to prepare, you need to know these things. You need to know the timing. You need to know who the decision maker is. And you want to know some things about lifestyle. Again, all of this stuff depends on what you're selling. And the features and products and the benefits and features of the product that you sell or the services that you offer may change depending on what the person's specific needs are, of course. If you're somebody who's selling the services of some kind of contracting service, some carpentry, some plumbing, or if you're selling a car, or if you're selling clothing in a retail environment, of course it all changes. And what you're trying to do is find out enough information based on the context of your business that you can advise people properly. You don't want to just start, presenting things to them and showing them anything. You want to try to make logical and emotional, appealing recommendations to them based on the information that they've shared with you. That's what the needs discovery is all about. And what you don't want to do is interrogate. I like to suggest that you do a quid pro quo. So how that works is offer a little bit of information about your products or services and then ask a question. And within the information that you give them is the justification for the question that you're following up with. It may be something like, now with the custom widget XYZ, we are taking orders for late fall delivery. Have you given consideration to when you'll need your custom widget? So you've offered a little piece of information about how long it takes to arrange the product for them or the service, and then you ask a question. So, and you see where the question was justified by the information you gave. And you can do that with all sorts of things to get information about it. You can also use third party. Many of our customers are very concerned about the environmental impact of this product. Is that something that's of concern to you? And this is another way to try to uncover the hot buttons, we'll call them. So everybody has a different thing that's important to them. And if your product and service has a whole bunch of different appealing aspects to it or characteristics, then you can't go over all of them every time. That would just take too long usually, and also be boring, and it would not be the ideal sales situation. Instead, what you want to do is find out what's important to that person and then highlight those aspects of the product or service that you have. And so spend some time not only finding out what their needs are, but also what their emotional hot buttons are. And then, by the way, going back to the greeting and then throughout the entire sales process, but it's sort of top heavy. In the beginning, when you're doing the welcome and the greeting, and then certainly into the needs discovery, you want to spend some time on that notion we talked about, that there's three things you're trying to sell. You have to sell yourself, you have to sell your company as a reputable company, the brand, someone that's going to be there for them to back up, to stand behind the product or service, and then you got to sell the product or service itself. So spend some time throughout injecting information that helps to sell yourself, your personality, your tonality. And when we talk about that needs discovery, that's a good time to introduce the concept of active listening. When you are getting information from somebody, if you're distracted by, say, another salesperson or by incoming alerts on your phone or anything like that, that's just disrespectful to your customer. You're not really listening. You miss some key information and end up making a poor recommendation to them. So for active listening, if you are face-to-face, you want to make eye contact. You should be nodding. Don't make it weird, but if you do understand what they're saying, it's natural to nod and in affirmation of what they're saying. And if you ask permission to, it's also wise to take notes. You may be selling a big ticket item. You might be a new home salesperson. And I think it's very important to take notes. For the bigger the ticket the item, the more money that the person is being asked to invest in your product or service, the more you should be taking notes. You don't want to forget these key pieces of information. So spend some time learning to actively listen, that quid pro quo, paying attention, eye contact, nodding, taking notes. There are other things, asking good questions, open-ended questions. You don't want to just ask yes or no questions. That's where I talk about interrogation, like, well, what color do you like? And what features do you want on it? And how many bedrooms if you're building a house? If you're just firing questions at them, that's an interrogation. It won't be comfortable, it'll be awkward, and you will not get the desired result. You certainly aren't going to continue to build a solid relationship. You're going to put somebody on the defense, okay? So after the needs discovery, if you feel like you have enough information to make a good recommendation, then you move on to exactly that, a recommendation, a product selection. You should be forming in your mind recommendations as they're giving you information. Now they might want model B instead of model A, and they may really appreciate this add-on feature. One of the things we specialize in is we also offer this to certain customers who have this particular need. It's really hard to, without specifically knowing what business you're selling. So hopefully you can contextually imagine the product that you're selling, and you want to make all of this training kind of make sense for you. The key is, at this point, you've gathered enough information that you can make a product recommendation. And then you can transition. You can say, well, I think I know what it is that we offer that might best suit you, assuming you have more than one product. And what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit more about widget XYZ. So then you've made your product recommendation, and you make a transitional statement like I just did there, and then you go into what's known as the presentation. And in the presentation, you're going to present the product or service, and you're going to let them know what the features and benefits of the product are. And there's a difference between a feature and a benefit. So a feature, if you were selling some custom LED permanent Christmas lights on a house, the feature might be that it is installed with custom matching trim in the soffits and the color matches. But the benefit might be that your house looks better. Another benefit of that may be that you do not have to take the lights down after the Christmas season. So differentiate between features and benefits. And what I always recommend doing is start by describing the benefit and then tell them about the feature that is the reason for the benefit, as opposed to the other way around. Instead of saying our custom Christmas lights are installed to match the soffits, that way you don't have to take them down and they look good all year round, they're low profile or whatever. Instead say, one of the things you're going to love about our product is you're not going to be putting them up and taking them down, and your house will look great all year round. And that's because we offer a color matching custom soffit track for our LED Christmas lights or what have you. I use that benefit because I use that example because I actually just purchased some of those. And that's what you should do when you're considering sales training, is you should put yourself in the shoes of a customer. Imagine things that you've purchased and imagine sales processes that you've been through. And were they good or were they bad? Did you recently purchase some jewelry? Did you recently purchase a car? Did you buy a house? Did you just go out and shop for some new clothes? It can be anything. Did you deal with a contractor? Did you have somebody into your home or into your business who provided you with a particular service? And ask yourself, what did you like about that interaction and what did you not like? And just make a note of that, and then figure out how to, again, apply that into the context of your business and your sales processes. You always want to do and always be improving, always be perpetually refining your process and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. So again, we go into our features and benefits as part of our presentation. And the other key here during the presentation phase is we want to be focused on those hot buttons that we found out about in the needs discovery. We want to focus on those things that the person said was important to them, to him. And we never want to do what I call the show up and throw up. You don't want to just regurgitate all the information you've ever learned about your product and service to every single customer. That is not, you've got to customize your presentations to hit the hot buttons, to appeal to the individual customers, customize things. You have to adapt, and you have to be a bit of a chameleon. When I talk about being a bit of a chameleon, that takes me back again in the process, going back to the greet and throughout, is adjust your personality according to the personality of the person you're dealing with. If you're dealing with somebody who's really an extrovert and very loud spoken and sort of in your face and very jovial or whatever, it's very comfortable perhaps for you to be that way. And many salespeople are that way naturally. But even if you aren't, you need to take it up a notch for that type of personality of customer. Otherwise, they're going to feel like, you know, you're disinterested, you're apathetic about your product, because they're sort of looking at the whole customer experience through the lens of their personality. And if they like communicating in that way, you should adjust. You should be that chameleon and adjust to that communication style. Conversely, if you're dealing with somebody, if you have that type of personality, if you're really robust, gregarious, charismatic person, and you're speaking with somebody and they're very meek, very timid, very quiet, maybe you can tell they're very nervous about engaging in the sales process, you need to take it way down, respect their space, and speak more quietly, be more respectful of boundaries they may have in terms of questions that you're asking, and just always try to adjust. If you're dealing with somebody who's very analytical, then I want you to hit maybe more on the technical aspects of the product, and you might appeal to the logical nature of such a customer. Conversely, if you've got somebody who's, you can tell is very artistic, they're probably more emotional personality, somebody who's wearing very vibrant colors, and maybe they've got more flashy jewelry. They're very subtle cues often you can pick up to learn a little bit about your customer throughout the process, and always adjust your sales presentation to make that person feel comfortable. This is not about you, this is about them. You want them to feel comfortable. Remember, people will buy from those that they know, like, and trust. If your personality is off-putting and they don't know you, you're a stranger, and they're not inclined to like you because you're not like them, then they're not going to trust you and they're not going to buy. You're dead in the water, so forget about it. So always try to adjust your personality accordingly, and then also adjust your presentation. Depending on your product or service, the presentation may also involve a demonstration at the same time. Some products can be very difficult to demonstrate. Maybe you sell software as a service and you've got to set up an account for the person, and there's got to be a bunch of data in the system. But those who sell that kind of product, software as a service, they often will have a demo account with dummy data input already, so that they can demonstrate and show people on the screen what it looks like. And if you're selling a car, of course, the equivalent of a demonstration in a car is a test drive. If you are selling a food product, then the demonstration after the presentation about the various, why the food's so great, it may be you're giving them a taste. And when it comes to the presentation and the demonstration, I would always recommend that you try to involve as many senses as possible. Many of you are selling in a virtual environment. And as I said earlier, human beings are both logical and emotional. You have to hit on both of those things. People don't want to make a mistake, so you got to have the logic to back up your recommendation. But also, people are emotional and they get excited. You want to be excited about something that you're purchasing, whether it's for your business, you're purchasing something for business, but certainly if you're purchasing something personally for yourself and your family, you want to enjoy it. You want to feel good about it later. So there's the emotional aspect of it as well. And so you could argue that you're at a bit of a disadvantage if you're selling virtually, and if it's a small ticket item that, a person's not investing that much, it may not be that big a deal, because they're barrier of entry price-wise. If it's a $10, $20 item, there's not much at risk. They're not worried as much about making a mistake. But if you're selling something that's $100,000 or $10,000 or even $1,000, you want to try to engage both the logical and the emotional aspects of the human personality of your customer. And so what I recommend you do is try to involve as many of their senses as possible. You know, their sight, if you can show them the product or show them the product in action, if you can show them the product doing and solving the problem that it's meant to solve. My example of the Christmas lights, if you could show them, even in a virtual environment, a video of the various color patterns and the ways that the person might use the product. So engage sight, of course. You want to engage sound. If there is a particular pleasing sound, or maybe there's a lack thereof. Maybe you're selling appliances and you've got the quietest dishwasher ever, and so you can use that. But of course, you want to also involve in the senses the sound of your voice in your presentation. You might have music as part of your presentation. Again, it depends. Maybe you're selling live events and you're getting the emotion stirred up with some uplifting music or whatever. So try to engage the sense of hearing. Engage the sense of smell. Some people who sell real estate or new homes, I've heard that they will bake cookies so that, and they can serve those cookies to people when they come in, but it's an immediately pleasing smell. And you can imagine the opposite. If there is an offensive smell when you came into a sales environment, that would distract you and turn you off immediately. You may not even be able to identify why, but your chances of being closed, your chances of converting and buying go down if there's something that's bothering you about that. Las Vegas, they're famous for, the casinos have scent marketing. So you go in and it smells great. It smells maybe like a cologne or a perfume. And these guys spend a long time customizing that stuff to make sure they A/B test it to try to get exactly what they're looking for. It's all about engaging the senses. And I mentioned the cookies with, say, a show home. I was recently planning a funeral, and they served cookies at the funeral home. And again, it was about trying to deal with the fact, and believe you me, there's a great deal of salesmanship involved in funeral planning. I can tell you that. And that's fine. It's a business just like any others, and they have to make profit. But they served cookies, freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. And so you've got the sense of smell, and then you get the sense of taste. And that's, you know, a comfort food. It's meant to soothe you. And so they understand the concept of engaging as many of the senses in the presentation and the demonstration of products that you can. And of course, touch. If you are in a non-virtual, or if you're in an actual environment where you're face-to-face with your customer, maybe they need to feel the weight of something. Like, you know, sometimes the weight just indicates quality. That have a hold of this. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe, you know, you're selling on the pitchman circuit, you're selling one of those special mops, and you want to feel how light this is. This won't wear your arms out while you're cleaning. This is super light. Or it's a fabric that's super soft, and those types of things. So you want to engage the senses as much as possible in the demonstration. After a successful presentation and demonstration, and throughout, but mostly during that time, you'd like to be introducing the concept of a trial close. You want to get your customer agreeing with you. And of course, if they do disagree, you want to know that at that point. If you've made a poor recommendation, then you want to know it at that point. So a trial close is about gauging where the customer's interest level is at this point. And are you on the right track? So you might say things like, could you picture yourself with this widget XYZ? Do you think this will fit nicely with your family's needs? These types of things. And I'll try to give you examples if you're interested in more trial closes that are specific to various industries. But think of how you might ask a question that gauges the temperature of your customer at this point. Are you on the right track? Are they excited? Are they nodding with you, following along? In sales training, we like to say, get your customer agreeing with you. You can have your customer agreeing with you over and over. You can be asking questions that reinforce the things they've already told you about themselves. And I know you care about the environment. Yes, absolutely, I do. And I know you're really worried about the safety of your family and so on. And they're agreeing with you. So you're reinforcing some of the benefits of your product by asking them, and they're nodding and agreeing. Conversely, if they are disagreeing or I don't know about this, or maybe you say, and you might ask something that gives an indication of budget, and you're getting body language or resistance, then you might want to back up a little bit and engage the needs discovery and make sure that you've got your information correct. But as you're doing so we've finished the presentation, the demonstration, we're doing some trial closing questions, we're getting agreement. Then we want to go into what are called a purchase consultation, or a review of your quote, basically reviewing the numbers. You want to look at the price. People want to know the price, and often that's the first thing they want to know. And we talked about in the video where we're talking about the premise of sales as opposed to the sales process, that your job is to increase the value in the mind of your customer to exceed the price. So you want your customer to believe that the value that they're going to get from your product or service is higher than what your price is. Anytime that you fail to do that, and the customer thinks that the price is higher than the value, you're either not going to make a sale, or you're going to be forced to try to reduce your price. That's going to be your objection immediately. And so everything up to this point is about that relationship building, making them know, like, and trust you, feel uncomfortable, and raising the value of the product in their mind. When they first looked at your website, maybe they only learned a little bit about your product, and they didn't know how much research and development went into the product. They didn't know the quality materials you use versus your competition. They don't know about how your competition gets complaints all the time and your customers are always satisfied, and there's reasons for that. So you've spent the time up to this point in the sales process explaining that to build the value, to justify your pricing, and to adjust the value in their mind of your product or service. So when we're talking about pricing at this point, you're reviewing pricing, you're putting your best foot forward, maybe there's no, some of you are selling things that are negotiable, others are selling things that the price is one-off, or not one-off, but the price is what it is. And that's becoming more and more the way these days. Fewer and fewer things are negotiable. A lot of business-to-business sales are still negotiable, and in the retail environment, there's still some negotiation that may occur, and certainly real estate and home sales, bigger ticket items, automotive sales. Some of those industries still have negotiation, but by and large, people are kind of getting away from that, and they're just up to this point making a decision whether the price is justified by the product or by the value that you showed of your products and benefits. The features that they have. So we also talked before about the various ways to build value. We want to talk about the customer experience, and all of this has been about you offering them a good customer experience, and respecting their time is a big one. Making them feel valued, making them know that you're going to be there for them. And we talked about how you're going to make sure that they believe also not just in you, but also in that the company that represents the product, that stands behind it, is reputable and is going to be there for them and is worthy of their trust, and the product or service. So we want to have a good customer experience to build value, very short wait times whenever possible. We want to have very high quality in our product, so spend some time focusing on the quality. Why is your product superior quality to alternatives they have? And we want to focus on building value through convenience. We're local, we're right here. If you needed replacement parts, if there was ever a problem, if you needed to do a warranty, we're right here. These types of things, convenience, you want to focus on that. And lastly, pricing. And that's where we are right now. We're talking about the purchase consultation and showing them a justification for your pricing. Also, during this period, you might spend some time giving them some options. Many of you are selling things that can be priced differently depending on what they choose. They may choose a software package, for example, that doesn't have some of the add-ons, and you can fit a lower budget by a more basic package. And then there's, the pro version or the enterprise version that has more features, and you spend and so you can give them options to fit their budget. As opposed to negotiation, you have options for how they fit a budget. Also, you might have financing options. Some products and services offer for a larger volume purchase or a longer commitment, maybe a subscription for a year as opposed to a month, then there's a discount. So that's something, Costco only sells in big quantities, and in exchange for purchasing higher volumes of product, you get a discount. So those are options that you might have as well. And there might also be options that you want to discuss at this point regarding financing. Maybe your company offers terms for people that they can pay on a monthly basis, or you might have leasing involved, various lending options. Certainly in bigger ticket items, that's a part of the process. If you're selling homes and you're discussing mortgages, often there's a relationship between a new home seller, between a real estate agent, between an automotive salesperson and various lenders, so you can assist your customer to make decisions. And you've got to anticipate these things in advance. At this point in the process, by the time you're talking numbers, we're getting very close to the end of the process, you want to make sure that you have a pretty good idea of if this is going to work or not, and what objections, if any, you want to anticipate those. And what I'd recommend you do is at this point, try to address those objections. Some would advise you that you should not bring up an objection that doesn't exist. And that sounds logical. You don't want to create an objection for them. However, I think you want to also anticipate objections and try to eliminate them before they bring them up. Because if your customer brings up an objection and then you try to overcome that objection, now it can come across argumentative. And we'll talk about objections. In fact, I'll do an entire video training on how to handle objections. But for now, let's think about this. If you are addressing an objection, someone says, the price is too high, or really, it's going to take 2 weeks for delivery on that. I need this tomorrow, or whatever. By the time you respond to that, it's now sort of argumentative. So instead, you may proactively or preemptively address an objection. If you're thinking that the delivery time, as an example, might be an issue, you might say something like this before they bring it up. Now, many of our customers are kind of surprised to hear that it's going to be 2 weeks. Sometimes our customers are hoping to get it tomorrow. And we can completely appreciate that. We know that some of our competition is offering next day delivery. But because of reasons that we discussed, X, Y, Z, our customers are always finding it's worth the wait. That's just a quick example of how you might preemptively address an objection that you anticipate. Maybe it's a common objection, it's the one you get every time. So you introduce it before they do, and you spend some time overcoming it. Later on, they can address that when you find out. And then, so once you've shown them the numbers, sometimes, depending on your industry, there's other little details you may need to do. But now it's time for the close. Now you have to close. And that means ask for the business, ask for the sale. You've earned the right, I like to say, by this point. You should have. If you haven't invested enough to be able to ask for the close, then you have to ask yourself, well, what do I need to do differently in my sales process so that I do feel comfortable asking for the business? Now, asking for the business, as weird as it is, this is the part where so many salespeople fall apart. So I want to make it simple for you. Everybody would love to hear some magic words that you can ask that works every time. Here's the magic. You have to ask. You have to ask every single time. Even if it's a little awkward, you have to ask. Then, after asking for the business, and I'll give you an example of the words you might use depending on the product or service. After you ask, you have to wait for the answer and you have to say nothing. One of the things I used to do is I would give away hockey pucks, you know, the rubber black discs. If you're not Canadian, if you're Canadian, it's silly for me to explain what a hockey puck is. But those black rubber discs that they play ice hockey with, in Canada we never say the word ice before the word hockey because it's always ice hockey. I used to give away the pucks to sales team members, and I'd tell them to put that on their desk as a reminder to them that after you asked for the business, you shut the puck up. All right, it was a very poignant way of making the point that you don't talk. The next person to talk loses the negotiation, so to speak. It's maybe not the right way to word it, but you understand the point. Once you ask for the business, you wait for the customer to respond. And the customer will either give you his business at that point, agree, or he will not give you his business. And then you can go into the objections and find out. The only exception to the rule where you're shutting the puck up and you can actually speak again first is if you think maybe the customer didn't hear you or you're going to re-ask for the close. That's the only exception. And of course, enough time must have passed that it's almost awkward. You're trying to leverage the awkwardness of the situation to get an answer. And by the way, this is the same in relationships. You know, if you're trying to influence somebody in your life, maybe you're trying to ask for a date. I used to give that as an example of sales training. It's all about influence, and you're selling your features and benefits of yourself to somebody, and then you ask for the date, or you ask somebody to marry you, or whatever. At that point, shut up, shut the puck up, and wait for a response. Now, if you're thinking the person didn't hear what you said, you can repeat it, and I would recommend maybe changing the words or increasing the volume. But it has happened where a person didn't hear me, and I had to re-ask for the sale. So that might go something like this. So you reviewed the numbers and everything, and then you say, so you know, what we talked about earlier, I know this will fit into your budget, and this is also going to address the safety concerns you had, the environmental concerns that we discussed, and also, as we discussed, it's going to work with the timing perfectly for you. So would you like to go ahead with that one then? Now I shut the puck up. So a closing statement might be something as simple as, would you like to go ahead with that one? Or, you know, some people say, so would you like to proceed with the paperwork at that point? I don't like using that one, but you've got to work with something that's good for your personality, for your business, in the context of your business, the product and service you sell. Ask for the sale, shut the puck up, and then proceed. There's also something known as the assumed sale, or assuming the close, which is to just proceed with the paperwork. Okay, so in order for us to get this out to you by tomorrow, like we promised, I'll just get you to autograph the paperwork here and just get your agreement on this section here. You hand them the pen or whatever. Or you might say in a smaller retail environment, it might be just a matter of getting the credit card. So you're selling particular items in a retail location. Okay, so would you like to put that on your Visa or your MasterCard? You know, that's a closing question. And or the assumed close, the question there would be, I just need your Visa or MasterCard, and then you can, you know, extend your hand to get that. In automotive sales where they take deposits, or in real estate where they take deposits, you might say something like, okay, I just need a Visa or MasterCard for the deposit, and you can extend your hand. And the person in that assumed situation reaches for the wallet and hands you a Visa or MasterCard. That's them saying, yes, let's go ahead with it. Okay, so that's the close. And then you want to, you know, depending on your product, maybe you're wrapping it up and they're taking it in a bag and they're walking away at that point. Maybe you are planning in the calendar when you're going to come out to the home to do the work that they've ordered in your service as a contractor, or whatever it is, you need to now do the logistical part of arranging for the delivery of the product or service to them. And you handle that logistically as the next step. And then I'm just going to jump onto the next one. Let's say they've got the product or service. This is critical. This, I can't believe how many businesses or how many salespeople skip this. You have to follow up with your customers to ensure their satisfaction. And satisfaction is the minimum. You want to ensure that they're delighted with your product or service. And so follow up. If you don't have a good tool like a CRM, customer relationship management tool, give me a call. We'll set you up with that. We've got all the software, everything you need. We've got the best CRM that you can imagine. And we have all the automated tools that you need. You might have surveys go out to your customers automatically where they can rate you and this kind of thing. We can automate so many of those processes. You have to follow up with your customers. Don't assume that if they're not complaining, that means that they like the product or they like the service or they're happy. They may just be complaining to their family and their friends or their colleagues, their neighbors about how disappointed they are. And it's one giant secret to you. You want to make sure that you take the time. Now, it's ironic and it's flawed thinking, but some salespeople avoid following up because they're afraid of a complaint. If there is a complaint, if you know for sure the customer is unhappy, that's the customer you should be following up with first so you can solve the problem. And so whether, it may be a commission at stake or a lot of extra work for quality assurance and going back and reworking the service or whatever, you just got to do it. That's just part of business. You shouldn't be in business if you can't offer a quality product. You'll occasionally get customers who have unrealistic expectations. It's not even worth spending much time in training talking about them because it's rare. You don't manage by the exception, manage by the rule. But if you do have somebody and their expectations are unrealistic, I would still advise that you try to meet those expectations, and then maybe you can choose not to deal with that customer in the future because he has unrealistic expectations and you can't deliver, and every time it's going to be a problem. But that's so rare that it's not really worth worrying about. So make sure that you have process in place to follow up with your customer. That's a good place for us to end. There is so much material here. What we can do is we'll break down each of these phases. I mentioned at the beginning of this video, what I'll do is I will talk about in a virtual environment how these might occur. If you don't do face-to-face sales, maybe your website from start to finish is responsible for generating sales for you, and you don't even do a video presentation or anything. We'll touch on that. But what I need from you is in the comments, whether you're watching this on Facebook, YouTube, wherever, give me the questions that you have. If there's something that I skipped over or I didn't elaborate on enough, then simply say it and we'll delve into that and explore that a little further. And we'll just keep going and give you all the information that you can. If you're in sales, I got to tell you, it should be a very enjoyable career and it should be very rewarding. The whole thing about sales is you get to deal with people. If you don't like dealing with people, you should not be in sales. But people are great. In fact, some of the most annoying people are great. It's what makes the world so amazing is we have these people that sometimes you just look at their actions and how they behave or whatever. You got to chuckle. But it's fun. It's great dealing with all the different personality types. And in sales, that should be the thing that gets you up every day and excited about doing what you do. And it's a really honorable profession, and it's something that you can refine throughout your entire career. If you're in business and you say, well, I'm not in sales, first of all, you're wrong. You are in sales. As a business owner, you're in sales. But maybe you just realized that you are brutal at sales. And first, I would advise you, learn as much as you can about it regardless, but then hire somebody to sell for you. If it's just not your forte, fine. But learn about it and have an appreciation for the difficulty that it is for what's invested in a sales career and what a good salesperson is able to accomplish. Many people try, but it's a really unique individual. And you as a customer, by the way, we're all customers. All you business owners are purchasing things for personal use and for your businesses and so on, and you're customers in some regard as well. When you have dealt with somebody who's great to deal with, you have a real appreciation for them. And that's what it is about dealing with somebody who's masterful at sales, is that they have honed their craft, but really it's probably because they enjoy it. So invest time in refining things, but relax a little bit. Go out of your way to help people. That's what you should be doing in sales. And if you're not representing a product or service that you can feel comfortable about, then you need to change. First of all, if you're running a business with a product or service that you don't feel good about, and you still want to be in business, that's fine. Just choose a different product or service and relaunch your business. If you're an employee of somebody and you're selling something and you don't really believe in it, maybe you're doing it as a means of, it's the only job you could get and it's a means of learning the craft, fine. But work your way toward representing products and services that you can be proud of, that you really believe in, that offers real value, real solutions to customers. That's where we're going to leave it today. Thanks for watching. Let's keep perpetually refining.